Welcome to our Saturday's devotions. This will be the last of the morning devotions in the book of Romans. The series in Romans will finish, God willing, tomorrow morning in morning worship in Brookside. So, Romans 15, we're looking at today, verses 22 to 32, and looking at it under the heading of Gospel Living. So, let's read those verses together. This is the reason why I have been so often hindered from coming to you. But now, since I no longer have any room for work in these regions, and since I have longed for many years to come to you, I hope to see you in passing as I go to Spain, and to be helped on my journey there by you, once I've enjoyed your company for a while. At present, however, I am going to Jerusalem, bringing aid to the saints, for Macedonia and Achaia have been pleased to make some contribution to the poor among the saints at Jerusalem. For they were pleased to do it, and indeed they owe it to them. For if the Gentiles have come to share in their spiritual blessings, they ought to be of service to them in material blessings. When therefore I have completed this and have delivered to them what has been collected, I will leave for Spain by way of you. I know that when I come to you, I'll come in the fullness of the blessing of Christ. I appeal to you, brothers, by our Lord Jesus Christ and by the love of the Spirit, to strive together with me in your prayers to God on my behalf, that I may be delivered from the unbelievers in Judea, and that my service for Jerusalem may be acceptable to the saints, and so that by God's will I may come to you with joy and be refreshed in your company. May the God of peace be with you all. Amen. Now, as we think of this subject today of gospel living, we just remind ourselves that the book of Romans is all about the gospel, and Paul has taught what the gospel is, why it's needed, how Jesus is the gospel, and how we receive that gospel through faith, and then the outworking of it in our lives. And as we think of it here, we see Paul has gospel priorities in verses 22 to 24. He says in that verse 20, this is the reason why he hadn't come to Rome earlier. And it goes, you had to go back a verse or so, was because he had this desire, this goal, to preach the gospel where it never had been preached before. And so the reason why he didn't go to Rome is the gospel had reached Rome. So he was going to places where the gospel had not gone to. And so he longed to be able to do that. His own preferences were, yes, he longed for years, he says in verse 20, to go to see the believers in the Rome. But his own preferences were secondary to the gospel needs. And there's a real challenge for us if we're Christians. How do we decide things? Is it my own preference? Is it what's comfortable to me? Or is it gospel priorities govern my thinking? And even now in verse 24, as he speaks of going to Rome, he's going to them because it fits in with his gospel ministry of going further to Spain, to where the gospel had not been before. So have we those gospel priorities? Is the gospel central in our lives? Secondly, we see gospel care in verses 25 to 28. Paul, when he's writing this letter, is believed to be in Corinth, and he's now going there, that part of Greece, to go to Jerusalem because the churches in Greece have indeed given financial aid to be taken to the believers in Jerusalem who were suffering so much at a difficult time. He speaks in verse 27, this is properly a two-way street. They received so much blessing from the church in Jerusalem in regards spiritual blessing and gospel truth, and now they're returning it in material, meeting their material needs. And so we all can give, we can all serve in many different ways and support each other many different, sometimes materially, sometimes in spiritual needs. We all have a work to do. The church is one big family. These people in Greece and Jerusalem, most of them never seen each other, never had met, and yet they were supporting each other because of their love of the gospel. We should have that love, that gospel care for those around us, but across our world. And then we have gospel prayer in verses 29 to 33. He says that he hopes that his coming will be a real blessing in verse 29. His coming to Rome will be coming in the fullness of the blessing of Christ. Now, does he mean a blessing to them or a blessing to himself? He probably means both. That he just knows that when believers come together, Christ gives blessing. We're missing that coming together, aren't we? Oh, let's take opportunities we have. If you're open to Zoom, able to use that, take those opportunities. But hopefully we'll be able to meet together again, because as we meet, there's such a blessing. Paul calls in verse 30 for a striving in prayer. He calls for these believers to engage in this, and there's an earnestness here in this, and there needs to be effort put in it. Praying is not easy, and one of the secrets of Paul's powerful ministry is this striving in prayer, and we need more of that these days. And you know, it's discouraging when so many Christians will not meet with their brothers and sisters to pray. We need to be striving in prayer, privately at home and with God's people. 3 things he wants them to pray for. First of all, that he'll be delivered from the unbelievers in Judea. As he goes to Jerusalem, he knows he'll face opposition and danger. That wasn't going to stop him. Do you remember how the book of Acts, Agabus warns he's going to be bound? Still, he was going to go. He said, I'm prepared to die for this. So he prays to be delivered from unbelievers. Secondly, he wants them to pray that his service will be acceptable to the saints, to the Christians there. That they would indeed appreciate the ministry, the word he's sharing. And that's something to pray, that indeed the believers will appreciate the ministry among them. And then thirdly, that he'll be able to come to Rome and meet these folk as he desires. Gospel living. He had gospel priorities, gospel care, gospel prayer. Are you a gospel person? Is the gospel of Jesus Christ controlling and dominating your life as it should be? It's not just you have the gospel in weak corner. It has to be central. It has to take over. May God give you such grace. Amen.